And welcome to the Crash the Pond podcast. It is a Tuesday, July 2nd edition of the podcast. So happy July 4th Eve to everyone. I believe that's an official holiday. Could be wrong
Yep.
about that though.
The
July,
Eve is an official holiday.
yeah,
Today's a holiday. I shouldn't have worked.
yeah, you shouldn't have worked. None of us should have
Ah,
worked. None of us
ah,
should ever work.
ah.
But it's an important day because last Friday, we covered the draft, we covered the first round, and there was a day two of the draft, which we'll talk about at some point on the podcast. But yesterday was the opening bell of free agency. It's kind of like the gun at the beginning of the race. Olympic theme there for you. Summer Olympic theme there for you. Lots to discuss. Lots to discuss. All business today.
No, we're not welcoming people into any sort of home. We're just letting them go, letting
All
them roam
gas.
free.
We're welcoming them into the conference room today. Boardroom.
Cold.
Boardroom. Yeah, we want
Wow.
AC. We want we
Oh,
want air conditioning.
I meant cold from the perspective of wow, a conference room, so homely, so nice. But yeah,
We have snacks. We brought snacks.
do we have waters, sodas, beers?
There's some waters. There's some flavored sparkling water.
Yeah.
There's stuff.
Yeah. So where do we want to start with this?
Yeah, we're in the war room. This is the war room. The
This
CTP war room.
Are we sitting on the porch that Pat Verbeek has been on for the last 2 days, holding a stick with one AirPod in?
The amount of pictures that have been posted because of that porch, it feels a little overdone at this point.
Also, fix the logo on the porch.
Yeah, like they have the wrong logo. The porch is like weirdly small. Like I don't know why they made it that small. It's also just kind of creepy, like the way it kind of just overlooks the ice. It's not the most aesthetic. Is
No,
that being harsh?
no, it's not.
But so we have a lot to discuss. A lot happened for the
Yeah.
Ducks in the last 48 hours. And
Well,
well, I saved the sarcasm.
okay,
We're going to go in chronological order because I
okay.
feel like it's the only way to do this properly. At first, I was like, should we just talk about what happened today? But then, just the beat by beat is fun. So I think where we should start is the qualifying offers, which is something that you and I have spent a lot of time
Yes,
talking about.
yes.
And so few people didn't get qualified and just won't be back at all.
Yeah, yep.
Max Jones.
Max Jones. I mean, you and I talked about it so
Mm-hmm.
many different times, and we had so many different questions always asking. The only one that was like I felt like a for sure was going to get qualified was Jackson Lacombe. I think you and I both agreed
Mm-hmm.
on that. And then Nestorenko felt like he would be also just because of Verbeek trading for him, and probably Regenda. And there were maybe some others in there that I thought might be like Braden Tracy just because of the first round pick pedigree. But we've talked about it. And I think you had even said like, no, you didn't expect it. And so at the end of the day, the Ducks only qualified those three players. And they also happen to be three of the players that aren't arbitration eligible. But it also just, they are three of the younger players that have played NHL games, have probably proven to Pat Verbeek in some sense that they could be NHLers, and their next deal, because of the deals they're coming off of, aren't going to be that big. And so he felt comfortable with the qualifying offers that were given to them.
Yeah. So the list of players not qualified and not brought back at all. Max Jones, he is now a Boston Bruin. He actually got a 2-year, $1 million AAV deal from the Bruins, which didn't expect a 2-year deal for Max Jones, but good for him.
Yeah, and just to jump in really quickly on that, that is less than what his qualifying offer was.
Yeah.
Like that's a piece of this puzzle. I believe his qualifying offer, I'm trying to look it up right now, but the qualifying offer would have been 1.5 mil.
Yeah. But he got his term. He goes to a team that I think is a nice little fit for him.
Mm-hmm.
He definitely screams Bruin. So happy for him. I can't say that it's a huge loss for the Ducks. I think the part that sucks is that he was a first round draft pick and he was a later round first round pick, but it never really felt like his career with the Ducks ever really hit its stride. It always felt like stopping and starting. He would have good stretches, then he would get injured, then there would be coaching changes, GM changes, more injuries, and it never really felt like he brought it all together. So hopefully in Boston, he'll just have a role. He'll be healthy. I think what's great about Boston for him is that there's just a lot of stability there, and which is kind of like the opposite of the experience he's had with the Ducks so far. So well wishes.
Yeah,
which
and
is
I mean, he's not going to be put on the power play in Boston, which is just putting him in a role
no.
that he's not meant
You know,
for.
you don't think so?
No. I think he's going to be liked by the Boston crowd, but I think it's going to be interesting because part of me wonders with Max Jones if because he's a first round pick, you want to see him succeed. And I wonder what happens when that goes away, when that expectation of not being a first round pick goes away, and whether that helps him or hurts him in some ways.
It's a clean slate.
Yeah, it 100% is. So good for him. Good for him for getting that deal. I don't think it's a hit to the Ducks, and I think that they will get into it today. But I think that they found someone that is an improvement over Max Jones that is somewhat similar to him.
And then you have Bo Grew, who they also did not offer a qualifying offer for. He's now a Ranger. He got a 1-year deal below $1 million. I don't think either of us really expected him to be back.
Nope.
I mean, there was maybe a chance because they really tried. I think they really tried to see what he could do this season. He was scratched a lot, and maybe you would counter and say, well, they played Ross Johnston over him, so did they really try?
Yep,
but
that's where I was going to go.
I think that they gave him a pretty decent shot. They gave him a shot the year before, and I don't know, like it's another kind of fourth line guy. Don't know really where the upside was going to be with him.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on. I think he got opportunities. I should clarify that. I think he got opportunities. He played in 45 games this year. I just don't think he ever ran with it and ever played well enough to keep himself in the lineup where it was a necessity where Greg Cronin had to keep him in. And I think that that's an issue. If you're in a fourth line role and you cannot play well enough to get that, you look at his underlying metrics and they were not pretty for him throughout the entire season. And that resulted in him not playing that much. And at the end of the day, that means you walk away. And the one thing I want to jump in on really quickly here, because it's kind of interesting, because I feel like 3-4 years ago, I would have thought walking away from RFAs, not qualifying them, why are you doing this when they can remain in the franchise and become assets? But I think what we're seeing more and more with NHL teams is that you know that these guys aren't going to be able to be traded for anything. You're not going to get anything from them from a trade perspective. And so holding them on to them, having these negotiations that go to arbitrations don't do anything for you long term. And so it's better to just walk away from the table, open up the roster spot as a result of it, because that additional roster spot ends up becoming as beneficial as maybe, a 7th round pick at best that you're going to get for these guys in a trade, most likely even less, right? So it's just an interesting kind of thing where I think the league has kind of gone to this situation where I think players aren't qualified as much. I think it was a situation maybe 4 or 5 years ago, every player that was an RFA got qualified. I can't remember that many players not getting qualified back then.
And Paverbeek certainly is on that hype train.
But I think in general, almost every team's like that. There are so many teams that aren't qualifying players, and I think it's just kind of where the league is going, of just allowing player movement for these lower tier guys and not being afraid to walk away if just someone is not up to snuff and trying to go out and find something.
Yeah, I just think that with the Bo Grew, I just don't really know what was left to be seen with him.
Yep.
I think he's a nice player. I think he can have an NHL career. He's got all the tools. He can skate. He's got some size. He's not a nothing with the puck, but he's just, you can find those guys elsewhere and you can make room for others. And then other guys that didn't get qualified and are not brought back. Lindstrom, I'm a little surprised by that one, just a little bit, but we'll get to why that might not be surprising anymore. Braden Tracy, that one's a little surprising too. And then Blake McLaughlin,
not surprising at all. But
that one's just a nothing burger. But the other two are somewhat noteworthy.
Braden Tracy is noteworthy, but I mean, at the end of the day, he's
another first round pick,
and was not arbitration eligible, I believe, actually, because this was coming off of his ELC, and they just decided to straight up walk away. And that I think is the first. This is the first non-arb eligible player that they can walk away from. But I mean, he's been in this with the San Diego Gulls for the last 4 seasons. Sorry.
Yeah, but very kind of like fractured tenure just because of COVID and all of that.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And so I think he's a victim in some ways of COVID, of circumstance with what's down there. And I think in some ways this is the Ducks seeing him and saying, okay, we're not gonna there's really not a path forward for him to be on this NHL roster because he doesn't really fit a bottom six profile necessarily. And so I think this was just saying, okay, it's time to let him go get a clean slate somewhere.
Yeah, and it just feels like there was a stink with the goals for the last couple of years, and it feels like the arrival of Matt McIlvaine either didn't make that go away, or maybe they were able to hone in on like, okay, who's actually going to be a part of the solution moving forward, and they clearly didn't think that Tracy was that. I think it's a little bit of a shame. I wish. See, we talked about Gru getting an opportunity. I don't feel like Tracy really ever got a chance, and you can say, well, he had to earn it and he didn't earn it, and that's fair. But I think from an organizational perspective, sure, you want guys to earn it, but you also want to know for yourself, like, what we have in this player. And there was ample opportunity to do that late in the season when, you know, they were vying for a top 5 draft pick and things were going down the gutter. It just felt like they could have done a little bit more there, but I mean, it's not the end of the world. And then Lindstrom, a right shot D, I thought maybe they'd bring him back, but they didn't. And I mean, he was a waiver wire pickup.
Yeah.
So no real loss there. The qualifying offers that were extended, Lacombe. So can you walk? Actually, I wanted to ask you this. So just so everyone knows, Lacombe was qualified. So that's his qualifying offer. Basically, for all 3 of the guys who were qualified it's 1 year and then about $100K. Lacombe, Nestorenko, and Regenda. So now that they've had this offer extended, what happens next?
So what happens next is now the Ducks have exclusive negotiating. So I believe all of them are straight RFAs, so they are eligible to talk to other teams. But the only way another team can sign that player is to an offer sheet, which gives the Ducks the ability to match any sort of offer that comes in or walk away and take the picks as a result of that. And so that and offer sheets, for those that don't know, they just don't happen regularly in the NHL. There's been like 3.
They don't even happen rarely.
2 over the last 10 years.
Yeah, they don't happen.
No, they don't happen. So what this basically means, and actually, sorry, Jackson Lacombe is not an RFA. He is a 10.2C, which means he is not even eligible for an offer sheet. Same thing with Nikita Nestorenko. And so what that means is they have not played enough NHL games to hit Group 2 RFA status. So they are not even eligible for offer sheets from other teams. They can only negotiate with the Ducks. Pavel Regenda, on the other hand, is an RFA. And actually, sorry, I should correct myself from what I said earlier. Pavel Regenda is arbitration eligible, actually, right now. So if this goes long enough, what that means is they'll set an arbitration date if either Pavel Regenda or the Ducks file for arbitration. And then eventually, if they cannot agree to a contract before the arbitration date, then it will go to a neutral arbitrator where both Regenda and Pat Verbeek will present their case, and they will end up ruling on what the AAV should be. And whichever party did not file for arbitration will be able to pick whether it's a 1 year or 2 year term as a result of that. So that's only for Regenda. For the other two, they aren't eligible for offer sheets. The Ducks have exclusive negotiating rights and have, I believe, until like isn't it December? I think December 1st, something along those. Don't quote me on that
it's
date.
Well out
to get the deal signed for those guys to play on the Ducks this season.
So Lacombe, Nestorenko, Regenda. Mildly surprised with Regenda, just because I didn't really think he was very good for the goals this season, despite the point totals. But he looked okay when he got called up with the Ducks, and he's a guy that maybe they just think they can get a little more out of. Nestorenko, he is a Pat Verbeek guy. He went out and got him. And then Lacombe did more than enough to deserve this, to be back. He looks like he could be a fixture on the blue line. So those all make sense.
Yeah.
Other guys that didn't get qualifying offers but did end up getting signed regardless: Lundestrom, Leeson, Vakanainen. So all 3 of those guys are back. I wasn't sure if any of those guys were going to be back, and none of them were qualified. So I guess our predictions were partially correct, but they're still going to be back on the team.
Yeah, technically Isaac Lundestrom signed before QOs were due, so there's that side of it. But his contract was underneath what his qualifying offer would have been, so none of them got qualifying offers from that perspective. So I'm a little bit surprised. I didn't know if Lundestrom or Leeson would be back, just with how Pat Verbeek has talked about the bottom 6, the 4th line, and everything like that. So mildly surprised there. I I'm fine with it though. Overall, I think that Isaac Lundstrom, you look at what he did last year defensively. I think if he's in a fourth line role, I think he can do worse than him for fourth line center, especially at 1.5 mil. I think that's good value. I think he's getting paid what a fourth line center should be getting paid. Brett Leason, I think in flashes, really surprised last season. I think that it's nice to see him back. I would not have been shocked to see him go, but I'd like to see him get another round with this team with everyone fully healthy. And then Urho Vakanainen, I mean, he was probably the surprise of the season for the Ducks last season, and just with the story of everything like that, I think it's a good story, I think, to have him back, especially if he was like a good person in the room, can play, and I think he's just going to be a seventh defenseman for this team moving forward.
Yeah, so all in all, in the wash, the Ducks really retain, I think, the most noteworthy young guys of this mix, the guys who can contribute, the guys who showed something this last season, and then the guys who are just kind of either didn't have a future or didn't show enough or some combination are not back. And then also Ben Myers has not been signed.
Yeah,
and is now, I forget which team he signed with.
Seattle.
Yeah, Seattle. So they gave up a 5th rounder to get him, and
not ideal.
He has walked away. Not great asset management, but
yeah. Do you think
is what it is? I guess
this is just pure speculation. Do you think Pat Verbeek thought he was going to be an RFA? He should know that he wasn't going to be playing enough where he would have become because he's one of those like Group 6 UFAs where he hasn't played enough NHL games, making him a UFA. But then again, the Ducks could have very easily offered him a deal to get him to sign, I would think. So
that would have been an egregious error. So I kind of doubt it.
Yeah, agreed. I think it was a Greg Cronin liked the guy, give up a 5th round pick, see if he can be an answer to the problem. Not the best asset management, but not going to be catastrophic.
No. Okay. So that's what happened before the opening bell. Actually, sort of. Let me ask you this for free agency. Do you want to start with what did happen or what didn't happen?
Let's go chronological because yesterday was a bit of a mess. And so I think we should start there and address kind of the conversations that were going around yesterday.
The elephant in the room.
Talk about all of that before getting into today and why today is kind of a sign of why what happened yesterday from a Ducks fan perspective was a bit over the top.
I'm just glad we started with the chronological with the qualifying offer because that stuff is like not nearly as exciting. So hopefully the overreaction crowd has been filtered out by now. And now we can talk about the big stuff and we won't get gotcha'd in the comments because they'll have just tuned out already. So July 1st, let's just start with this because I think this is kind of sets the stage and informs a lot of the reaction and the thought process. I think on 2 different occasions, Pat Verbeek said that he was aiming towards acquiring a right shot, top 6 right winger, and then a top 4 right shot defenseman.
3 different
times.
3 different times.
So he said it at the flock party / whatever you want to call it. That was over the weekend. He said it at the migration event. I'm running out of freaking dumb names for these things, but how many duck-themed things?
And then he also said it in the after the season interview on Duckstream.
He said it a bunch of times, and he never, correct me if I'm wrong, but he never said, I'm going to do this. He said something I would like to.
Yeah.
And that's something that we said repeatedly is that, most GMs want to do those things or would like to do those things. So kind of take it with some grain of salt, but that's clearly what they intended to do. And I think that what that tells us is that Pat Verbeek wanted to spend money to like directly make this team better in the very short term next season. Yeah. That was the intention going into day 1. He told us he's going to be held to it because he made it public. And on day 1, he did not accomplish his hope, his intention. Nope. The biggest fish, Steven Stamkos, goes to the Nashville Predators 4x8. And we have 2 different sources, Eric Stevens and Frank Saravalli, who have said that the Ducks took a swing on Steven Stamkos. Saravalli took it with a grain of salt, but said that they offered him more money and more term than he got from the Preds. So, and there was also rumblings from Stevens that they did take a swing on Jonathan Marchessault.
And I believe the Saravalli said the same thing on Marchessault.
Yeah, and Marchessault went to the Preds 5 times 5.5. So that would mean, if we're interpreting this correctly, that the Ducks offered at least 5 years for Stamkos and at least over 8 million. And then more for Marchessault. So those would have been big numbers for this team. I understand that they have a lot of cap space, but Stamkos is like 34. I think Marchessault is about 32. Those would have been big commitments on if they had landed either of those guys, and they didn't.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing for me with this is that yes, I think going into the day there were hopes. I think that's probably what killed a lot of fans there is what Pat Verbeek had said. You're kind of holding the standard. Okay, we see Steven Stamkos is out there, the connection, everything like that. The Ducks never denied that they weren't in on it. You had Bob McKenzie prior to free agency opening saying the Ducks were in on him. And so I think it builds up this hope and almost this expectation in some ways. But at the end of the day, the thing everyone has to remember is that it does take two to tango here. And also so Steven Stamkos, I probably wanted to go to a bit of a better situation than Anaheim. And the other issue kind of plaguing the Ducks for this offseason is that for the first time in since the summer of 2019?
Since the pandemic, yeah.
Since the summer of 2019, that the cap rose a significant amount where contending teams had money to spend. And I think that is a huge part of this, is that in prior off seasons, the Ducks didn't have to kind of go against that. They were the team with all the cap space. Not all teams had that, so they really were able to flex that to be able to pay guys a little bit more. Now that every team had more cap space as a result of the cap going up, they would have had to go even higher. And I think the end result from this would have been, like you said, Steven Stamkos signing a 5-year deal. At $9 million, which...
It's a big number.
The AAV isn't my issue there. It's the term. The fact that you're signing Stamkos until it's 40, and if you look at his numbers, yes, he scored over a point per game. Yes, he has that shot. Yes, everything along those lines where he would have helped the power play. But you look at the underlying metrics, and a decline has started for him. Like that decline has started. It's going to happen. It was something I think I mentioned even when we first started talking about Stamkos, where I don't know if I would have been comfortable with anything over 3 mil. 4 mil would have been or 3 years.
3 years.
4 years would have been pushing it even for me. And so going 5 years is tough. I would have rather gone 3 times 10 than 5 times 8.
Yeah.
Or 4. Like the AAV, you can work your way around a bit easier than the term. And same thing on Marchessault. Marchessault, I wouldn't have wanted to go over 3 years for the wear and tear on that body, for everything like that. And so while, yes, you would have wished they could have gotten these guys, the cost of doing that just would not have ended up worth it. And the Ducks were in some way saved by the fact that neither of those guys signed for the team. Because look at the way that we've talked about Alex Killorn and the fact that Alex Killorn is
Ryan Strong.
Well, I think Killorn even more so. Alex Killorn is a good player for this team right now, but that contract is not a good contract. And it's based upon the 4-year term given to him at his current age. These are just along those same lines, but they're just flashier players. Where in a year from now, are we going to be talking about them in the same way of Alex Killorn? And so I just think that from the Ducks' perspective, they were saved from themselves by the fact that those guys didn't sign. And I think that the same can be said for a couple of other situations, just with the amount of money that was being spent, and especially with the long-term cap implications of a 2 or 3 year deal. You can stomach that because the young guys on the team, they may get bridge deals. Leo Carlson might get a bridge deal. Mason McTavish might get a bridge. Like all those young guys might get bridge deals where you're going to come out and it's going to be fine in 3 years, and then you can pay them up once Stamkos is off the books. 5 years, they're not going to be on a bridge deal anymore. They're going to be on their big money, full deal, or they're going to be on it right away with no bridge, where the cap space is going to be going up. And by signing Steven Stamkos to a 5 times 10 mil, right? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That is going to make it difficult to keep those guys. And so you're going to end up having to give up a good player, good young player at some point in the future because of Stamkos. And I haven't checked. I would assume that Stamkos got a no move clause.
Probably.
There's going to be an expansion draft in the coming years.
Yep.
And that's something I did not think about till right this moment. If you went 5 years, there's going to be an expansion draft over that time period. Like, without a doubt, there will be. And if everyone out there remembers, no move clause have to be protected. And so this could limit the amount of guys you can protect because you're being forced to protect Steven Stamkos. So,
yeah. Yeah, I think what's interesting is that I listened to the presser that Kent Hughes did, the GM of the Canadians, and he said that they made a run at Marchessault, and he basically said it because Marchessault had publicly talked about it, so he was kind of forced to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But he basically said that they wouldn't go to the term he wanted. It sounds like they only offered him 3 years, and that they made a healthy run at him, and that but that there was just a line that they were not willing to cross because they didn't want to compromise their long-term
And
plan for the team. And with the Ducks, it kind of seems like the opposite, where they were just like, we're just going to give you as much as we can to try to get you. Like it's kind of interesting how you can see the clash in the approaches there.
and even to that perspective, the team that knew Marchessault best, the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah.
Kelly McCrimmon came out and said that they weren't willing to go over 3 years because as much as they love Marchessault, the numbers tell you that after a 3-year deal, it's going to hurt you. And so that is the team that knows him best, that took the stab on him, that he won a Conn Smythe for. And if they're saying that, then that's a sign that giving him over 3 years, probably not a great call.
Marchessault also said that they didn't try that hard to re-sign him, which I thought was a fun little bit of drama.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I think that's kind of the starting point for all of this, is that the Ducks did not get the big name, big ticket free agent. And that pissed a lot of people off because there was an expectation that was set by Pat Verbeek because he kept bringing it up.
Understandable.
And which I completely am sympathetic to.
Yep.
I think that my bigger issue with what happened on July 1st is that it didn't really feel like there was a plan B, or if there was a plan B, the execution was really off, because there were some interesting players that got signed to pretty reasonable deals around the league, and the Ducks just didn't get any of them. And I'm not saying that means Pat Verbeek did a crappy job or that he should be fired because of that, but like there were other guys that were on much more reasonable contracts that would have made sense, and they just swung and missed. I mean, we don't even actually know if they swung on some of these guys, but like, for example, Sean Walker, very reasonable contract with the Hurricanes. Tyler Toffoli, you might say that it's a little rich, but he would have made a lot of sense. Victor Arvidsson, really good contract. Even a Duclair, I think that contract makes sense. Like it just, Turvo Teravainen, like also very reasonable contract with the Blackhawks, 3 years, 5.4. So they weren't able to execute any of those. We don't know the degree to which they targeted any of that second rung, but being realistic, that second rung was probably where they should have consolidated more of their attention to, because I always said a Stamkos, a Marchessault, why would they come play for a rebuilding team? Those are guys that have won Stanley Cups, that probably want to keep winning, and that probably don't want to punt on a year of their, what's left of their careers. So getting these other guys would have made sense. The flip side of that, though, is that if you look at all the teams that guys signed with the exception of Toffoli with the Sharks, and Teravainen, you can say with the Blackhawks, although there's a bit of the homegrown connection there. The top free agents, and even like the next tier of free agents, they went to good teams. They went to competitive teams. And I think it was just one of those years where the money was there, and guys just don't want to be on bad teams. They don't want to be on rebuilding teams. And the Ducks have not built up that equity around the league. And Pat Verbeek, I think, has to be held accountable somewhat for not being able to sell the vision that he has for this team enough. Yeah. But clearly there was just not a desire to play for this team right now.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, and I mentioned this earlier, but I think the contenders having, 6-7 mil more than last season, that makes a difference.
But the Ducks also had money to spend. Like, I think that's...
No. Yeah. But my point is that the contenders were able to match on the market value of some of these guys where they would not have been able to in prior off seasons. And the two to me that I look at are, you mentioned them, but Tyler Toffoli and Sean Walker. I think Toffoli, the only concern there is we talked about not wanting to go to 4 years on Stamkos. Would we have wanted that on Toffoli? That fourth year would have been iffy for me. I would have rather gone 3 times 6. Or sorry, 3 times 7. Mm-hmm. Like, go 1 less year, but that's less overall money. And so the Sharks are in a position where they can do that 4th year, no problem. The Ducks aren't in that same position, where if this was a 2 or 3 year deal, they should have easily been in on it. The 4th year is where I start to question, and maybe that's where they drew the line. Maybe for a Marchessault or Stamkos, they were able to say, screw it. let's give him the extra years, but Toffoli, we're not as confident. We're not going to go above and beyond for that. And maybe it was the same thing with Sean Walker at a 5-year deal. Like a 5-year term is not unsubstantial. Like that is a significant amount of term to be giving
but
to
3.6 mil though.
Sure.
I mean,
sure.
Like, I don't know about that.
I just think that it's the term. I think that maybe for that second wave, they did not want to go to the term that other teams were going.
Well, I just can't take Pat Verbeek that seriously on the term thing anymore if he was offering 5 years for a 34-year-old at Stamkos.
That's fair.
Plainly.
That's fair.
So, yeah. But like Victor Arvidsson, though, like that contract to me, like they could have gotten that, and he would have helped. And there are injury concerns. I understand that, but that's a piece.
The Arvidsson deal feels like I'm going to go to Edmonton. I'm willing to do a little bit. I'm willing to do less there. I want to take less to go to the Oilers.
Yeah.
But yeah, so all in all, though, the first day happened, and the only thing that the Ducks did was re-sign Brett Leeson and Urho Vakanainen. Those were the only 2 deals that came out on July 1. There were no other deals for the Ducks where they had signed anyone. And we'll get into kind of the overall takes, I guess, after this word from our sponsor. So it's now officially the offseason. Baseball's going. The Copa America is going right now. You've got the MLS season going. You have so many sports that are going on this summer. And 714 Tickets is right here for you, and they've got you covered. They've got so many things for all your different sports, concerts, and live events right at your fingertips. Whether you're in Southern California, or I believe they have tickets for all throughout the country. So please take a look. And they don't charge you a single dime in taxes or fees. That's right. At 714 Tickets, what you see is what you get. No surprises at checkout, and with their user-friendly mobile app, booking your tickets is a breeze. You can browse, select, and secure your seats within minutes. You can shop online at 714tickets.com, call 714-TICKETS, or you can visit their new office. Once it opens up, check out their Instagram. They have moved just down the street, I think on the other side of the 57, across the street from the Shell station there on Catella, as OC Vibe is being built. So once their office is open, you can go in person, and you can get 10% off when you shop online using the code CTP.
Don't tell the no tax thing to NHL free agents.
Oh, but
714 is going to run out of tickets to sell.
To get back to the overall reaction, people weren't happy, to say the least. And I think overall, I get it because of the messaging. I think that is the biggest issue I have with July 1 is the messaging that came from Pat Verbeek, that he's had mentioned all this stuff. And then when you come up with a swing and a miss on these free agents, you're going to have unmet expectations. And that's going to cause people to be upset. And I think the key thing for anyone in that situation, though, is to take a step back and realize it's day 1 of the offseason. There's plenty more time for stuff to happen. And, well, let me kind of get this part out. And while, yes, the big free agents are all gone. That is the downside to right now is the big free agents that would have fit that role are all gone. That would have helped this team. But if you take a step back and look at this roster, and that was, I think, what I did yesterday and really jotted down kind of lines and things like that. Adding a top 6 winger is going to be extremely useful because it pushes guys down lower. But that is not the only path forward to improve this team. The biggest issue for this team is the 4th line, to be honest. And upgrading that 4th line is one of the most critical aspects of the offseason for this team. And you can either do that by adding players to that 4th line or upgrading the top 6 to push guys down into that bottom 6 and push everyone down lower into the lineup. And that can still be accomplished now. And so while it's not ideal that they didn't sign any of those guys and they are now off the board, there is still a path forward to improve this team in a way that is meaningful for next season.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to push back on the day 1 comment because that was thrown around a lot yesterday. And it's like, yeah, it's day 1 of free agency, but pretty much the first and second tier of free agents are pretty much gone. So and so the pathway to improvement through free agency, like, meaningful improvement, not just like pick up a couple 4th liners, but try to get some legit like middle 6 or top 6 pieces. That ship has just sailed. That ship is gone.
Yeah, I guess my point with the day one comment is that there are people out there that are saying that after day one, not doing anything, this is a lottery team again. And I think
No.
from that perspective, that's what I'm pushing back on. Of this is day one of the offseason. There are still 90 days for them to improve this team, whether it's through trade, whether it's signing one of the leftover free agents out there. There are ways to still improve this team. It's just essentially doing what Pat Verbeek said he wanted to do is no longer an option.
Yeah, and that's the key, is that yes, it's just day one. Yes, there are still avenues of improvement that remain, but this is kind of like one of the least, there's the least amount of friction because you just have to go out and sign a player. You don't have to execute a trade. You don't have to come up with a negotiation with another team. You just make an offer to a player and you hope they accept. And they struck out on that completely. I mean, in terms of like impact players, and that is, I mean, that is a missed opportunity. And I think that Pat Verbeek does deserve some flack for that.
Sure.
On the flip side, though, and this is something that we've kind of said repeatedly, but it's like a lot of the deals, including the deals that they themselves were seeking out, may not have been great ideas. And I think especially when you look at this Ducks roster, even if they had gotten a Stamkos, even if they've gotten a Marchessault, where are they really in the hierarchy? Like, yes, it pushes some guys down. It gives them an established piece in the top six. Hell, even if they get an Arvidsson, but like this team is still probably a year away from being a playoff team, if not, some would argue more. And so there was no like wave the magic wand and everything is going to be competitive again move in free agency. And so I think that that's where people need to maybe take a step back and reassess how much free agency could have legitimately helped. But yeah, it's a mixed bag. Like I just think that everyone wants to have a hot take about what happened on day one. And I get that. Like the emotions are part of it and it's fun. I just don't think there's really a hot take to be had either way. I think it's just both are true. Pat Verbeek kind of missed an opportunity, but also the things he tried to do may not have been in the best interest of the team long term. And there are still ways to improve this team.
And on that point, I think there's actually a free agent out there that I would target before we get into kind of what they did on day two. But I think Jack Roslovic, it would be a really good person for this.
I thought you were going to say Jakob Verana for a second because I was looking at his name. It's like, oh wow.
No, that's a take. Jack Roslovic is a guy I would target. I think you can maybe overpay him a little bit with a 4-year deal because he is 27 years old. And he's a guy that I think would fit him really well in a third line role on this Ducks team. He's a guy where if you look at his metrics, his underlying numbers are really good overall, and I think could improve this team from what they were doing. I think he would fit with what Greg Cronin would want from a player also. And so that to me, if I'm looking at the remaining free agents, that's the one I'm targeting.
Yeah, I mean, some people have brought up Vladimir Tarasenko. I mean, he does bring an interesting element. I mean, and he is a right winger, although he plays on his off wing. You know, he's got the shot. I don't really know how much he's got left, but he did score 23 goals last season. So there's still some guys that you can maybe scrape the bottom of the barrel with, but it's pretty much slim pickings. Like they're not bringing back Daniel Sprong.
No,
they're not going to go get Max Pacioretty, like Barabanov. Like it's, you know, I don't see any of those deals really happening.
No,
maybe Roslovic, but even that, like, I just don't know what's going to happen there. So
I think Roslovic would be just an ad for the bottom six, which is what Pat Verbeek has said also that he wanted to upgrade. And I think that if you look at what Roslovic can do, that is where he fits for this team.
Well, that's the thing that we've talked about a ton. And that's why it's kind of funny how this conversation has gotten flipped just in the public, which is that I think the biggest problem for the Ducks this season, outside of just health, was the bottom six, because, and especially now going into next season, the top six is pretty much set. Like, you know who the guys there are going to be, and quite honestly, those are the guys you want to be there. You drafted those guys like a Zegras, a Carlson, what have you. You drafted them to be in this position, and they need to grow into those roles, and they're not going to grow into those roles by not playing those roles. And so, yes, maybe going out and getting a couple top six pieces would have been nice, but you have your guys for those positions already. The problem was, and is, I would argue, the bottom six. You know, if you look at the Ducks bottom six last season, Ross Johnston, Bo Grew, Max Jones, I mean, it just was not a bottom six that was going to get you very far. A lot of times it felt like they had 2 fourth lines.
Yeah.
And so
Partially due to injuries, but yes.
And so addressing that remains a very big need for this team. And that is the bigger disappointment for me from day one, was like there were some guys that could have alleviated that and they didn't. But I look at, for example, a Rutger McGroarty in Winnipeg, who by all indications is going to get traded this offseason. That is a guy who might not be necessarily ready for a top 6 role, but if you can insert him into your bottom 6, he's going to add some youth, some speed, some skill, and then you go and add a Roslovic, and that kind of changes the look of the bottom 6 a little bit. So there's the thing with the bottom 6 and improving it is that that's an easier thing to improve than your top 6. Like there's more ways to get that done, basically.
Yeah. And I think you look at this team's top 6, right? Eventually, like Beckett Seneca is supposed to be in the top 6.
A couple years.
Yes, but I'm just saying, like, down the road, like, assuming everything stays put with Trevor Zegras, but there's your top 6, right? Like, like Killorn's still going to be there, but even if you take Killorn out, you've got Gauthier, Carlson, let's throw Terry there, and then you've got Zegras, McTavish, Seneca.
Yeah.
Like, that is that. And we haven't even talked, Logan threw in Sam Colangelo into this mix. Like
could be a good fourth liner. Yeah.
A good fourth liner, good third liner there. So that's someone we haven't even talked about. And so by going out and getting a Jack Roslovic, by trading for a Rutger McGroarty, these guys are going to help. And so there's a quick and easy way to upgrade the bottom 6, which, I mean, everyone talks about, like you said, what Verbeek said about the top 6 winger, right-hand shot defenseman, but he also really stressed that he wanted to improve the bottom 6. Yeah. And so that's something that I don't think is talked about enough. And so I think signing a Jack Roslovic would do that. And if you want to just jump in, he kind of addressed it slightly today.
Did he?
Not significantly, but he signed Jansen Harkins.
Oh, that's where we're going. I thought you meant like he said something, like he addressed it verbally or something.
No. He addressed the bottom 6 somewhat by signing Jansen Harkins, who's a 27-year-old, played for the Penguins last season, played for the Winnipeg Jets the prior seasons, to a 2-year, $787K contract. And an interesting player in some ways. You've watched him. You've watched some shifts of him, so I'll kind of let you jump in right now on it.
Can I admit something?
Yeah.
I didn't know who this guy was before today.
Same.
Like, I'm just gonna be straight up. Like, so if Ducks fans, if you had a gut reaction of who the hell is this guy, you are not alone.
Sympathetic for that.
I did not know who he was. I think what's interesting about Harkins is if you look at his plain old analytics, which maybe some people don't view that as plain or old, but his underlying numbers are actually pretty good. Like over the last 3 years, it's kind of a weird sample because he hasn't really played full seasons in the NHL, because he's kind of he's a guy who in basketball terms is a rotation guy. He's not necessarily going to be in the lineup every night, but he's a good defensive player just by those numbers. He has good defensive impact. And then today just went back and watched a few of his shifts, a couple of his recent games, end of the season. Very easy to get through, by the way, because when you're playing less than 10 minutes a night, it's not that hard to get through the shifts. It's honestly harder just to like pull everything up than actually watch them. But he can skate. Like, I think he's got some good mobility. He's positionally sound. He's tenacious on the puck. He can do some things with the puck and kind of get it moving around. He's got some hands. I posted a clip where he kind of skates through the neutral zone, skates around a couple guys. Not really like a physical guy, but just a smart stick, knows where to be. Just kind of your classic fourth liner. And I think that the Ducks have lacked these guys in the last few years. Like, just a guy who's going to play credible fourth line hockey, and who's just not, he's not going to be a liability when he's on the ice. And I know he's getting dunked on because he doesn't score a lot of goals. Like, I saw there were Pittsburgh Penguins fans replying to me, which, why are you engaging with me as a Ducks person if you're a Penguins fan? I don't really understand it, but saying that like Tristan Jarry had more goals than him or something this year. Like, I don't know what, but it's like, for me with fourth liners, I don't really care about goals and assists. I just care about, can you go out there and play solid hockey, not be a liability, maybe do some things with the puck occasionally, but really that's what you're out there to do. It's just to not get caved in, try to limit the bleeding, and give your top 9 an opportunity to, not be behind when they get back out there. So I'm not going to pretend that this is like this great impact signing, but for what they needed, which we just spent the last 10 minutes talking about, like you said, it does address it.
Yeah. And I think that that's the key part here is that, is this going to move the needle for this Ducks team? Probably not. I mean
it's going to move the little needle, which is the fourth line. And
correct.
that needle does need to move for the bigger needle to move.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So it's not going to move the needle a significant amount, but this is addressing what was an issue for this team, which is the fourth line. And also at his cap hit, if he's not productive or doesn't do stuff, you just waive him. And it's a nothing thing, and he goes to the AHL and not a big deal. And so,
someone's bringing up the chat. Lucha's bringing up that he's a great forechecker, and I did notice that too. He's aggressive on the forecheck, and I think Greg Cronin is going to love that.
From the brief clip that you posted, he reminds me of Max Jones, but just better defensively.
He does kind of feel like a more just polished Max Jones. Like everything is just tighter and, just more refined. But I'm not going to sit here and say I'm a Jansen Harkins.
Well, these are just the brief thoughts. You and I did not know who this player was prior to this game.
When I woke up this morning, I did not know who this man was.
Yeah.
So
and so overall, I think it's a good signing from Verbeek. He's targeting underutilized talent, potentially coming on the fourth line, signing at a low enough value where he can get waived and put with the goals if needed. But it's at least seeing what's out there. Maybe it's not going to help. Maybe it will. But I think he could be a useful player for this team. And as an improvement over Carrick, over Jones, over Grew, he's an improvement over all of those guys just based upon what he did last year.
Yeah, and I think the big thing, too, is he fits the way that the coach wants to play.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that we talked about a lot last year, but it's like Greg Cronin wanted to play a certain way and at times just didn't have the types of players to fit into that. This gives him someone that can help him accomplish that.
Yep.
But there was a trade. We have a trade to announce.
There was. And so this was the one that felt like it came out of nowhere because it feels like in typical Ducks fashion, this was not reported by any insider.
They broke the trade.
The Ducks broke their own trade. And I feel like that happens more often than not for this team. But yeah, so the Ducks acquired Brian Dumoulin in exchange for a 2026 fourth round pick. Brian Dumoulin will be 33 years old at the start of the season, but is on the final year of his contract. And his cap hit is $3.15 million. He is a left-hand shot defenseman, just finished up his first season in Seattle after signing there last summer and was in Pittsburgh for plenty of years prior to that. And he's a guy where if you look at his numbers, really, really good defensive impacts. Like a really good defensive impact player. When he was in Pittsburgh, granted, a couple years ago now, but he played with Chris Letang and was on the top pairing for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Last season played with Justin Schultz primarily and played pretty well with him. But he's without a doubt an improvement on any of the guys that left the defense for this group and is an improvement for the Ducks defense group.
Yeah, he's going to bring a level of defensive play that I think they needed an upgrade. They needed to upgrade the depth of their blue line. We've talked about it a lot. And now you're not necessarily relying on like an Urho Vakanainen. I thought that it was interesting, like looking at the tracking data from Corey Schneider, which pretty decent sample, 300 minutes at 5-on-5, but he's really, really good at retrieving the puck and then exiting the zone, which I can't say that was necessarily a strength of the Ducks blue line at times last season. And so bringing a guy who can do that is going to be good. Something that Corey Schneider mentioned, though, in a thread, which I thought was interesting, is that he called him a chameleon. And so he kind of blends into his environment, and the way that the team plays is going to influence some of his, outputs, which is probably true for a lot of players. But for example, this year, his rush defending was really, really bad. But if you go back to previous seasons with Pittsburgh, it wasn't great, but it was a lot better. And so I'm thinking that, if you factor in the retrievals, you factor in the defending his own blue line, and then you just look at the overall macro numbers, which are really good defensively, this is a good ad. This is a good ad for the
This
depth of their blue line.
this is a very good ad. And some people might say, well, why are you giving up a pick for him with his contract? You could have been paid. It's like, no, he's a good player. He has value to NHL teams, and he improves this blue line. He is an improvement over what Jackson Lacombe was last season. He is an improvement over what Urho Vakanainen was last season. He's an improvement over what the vast majority of the defensemen. Like, I think the only defenseman I would say was probably better than him last season was probably Radko Gudas.
I'd throw Minchikov in there.
Minchikov had his ups and downs. I think Minchikov will be better this season.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
think Gudas,
Minchikov was basically the offensive version of Dumoulin because his defensive numbers weren't good, but offensively was great.
Fair. But I think that Brian Dumoulin's going to step in and is going to be the third best defenseman on this team, potentially third or fourth.
I think he might be on the third pairing, which is fine.
No, yeah. Well, I think that the way the pairings are going to be set up is that you're going to have one young player with one older player. And I think that is also partially what this is doing. And so I guess to jump into the other part of this is him being left-handed is the confusion, I think.
That is the mystery in all of this.
That is
the smoking gun.
Because Pat Verbeek said right-handed for a reason. Because the Ducks have a bunch of left-hand shot defensemen, and they signed Urho Vakanainen also, who, granted, has played the right side for the Ducks. But
they all have at this point.
It's interesting because Brian Dumoulin primarily has played... Oh, someone's mentioning that Dumoulin is also big, so that might be also a thing here of Verbeek wanting a bigger defenseman on the blue line. But he's primarily played the left side. Like, this is a guy that has primarily been a left-hand shot defenseman playing the left side. That's what he did in Pittsburgh. The one thing, though, that was actually thrown into our Discord by Connor, by someone who was he threw a screenshot of someone from Reddit who's a Kraken fan, saying that Dumoulin actually did play the right side a little bit last season when paired with Riker Evans, who was a young guy for the Seattle Kraken. And looking at their pairing, they only played 172 minutes together, but they were at 55% expected goal share when paired. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not sure if that's a large enough, I know that's not a large enough sample to make any like large takeaways from it, but he has played the right side in recent history, not a significant amount, but that does, I think, open the possibility to putting him over there.
Well, they're going to have to put someone on the right side that's a lefty. Like, it's not even it's just a who, not a, if.
Yeah. And so I think what's eventually going to happen is the person that came to mind right away when they traded for him was Tristan Luneau.
Okay.
Like, I thought that would be a great pairing for Luneau because it's going to allow Luneau to roam a little bit more. Dumoulin will be able to break out the puck. He's not good at entering the zone, so Luneau can be really emphasized on getting the offensive zone, doing all that, while Dumoulin can stick back and kind of take care of the back end for Luneau when he gets up a little bit too high. The question ends up being, is Luneau going to be in the NHL next season? I think he could probably use more seasoning in the AHL.
I think he'll start there.
In the AHL or NHL?
I think he'll start in the NHL, and then I think he'll eventually go back down.
So if that's the case, then I think that Brian Dumoulin's going to play the left side, and you're going to have Tristan Luneau playing with him.
I mean, I hope I'm wrong about this, but I can't imagine Luneau barely playing any hockey, really, since his junior career ended, and all of a sudden coming in and just being like seamlessly ready for the NHL.
And that's why I think him starting in the AHL would make more sense. And also from the perspective of, if Luneau is playing, then one of Lacombe or Zellweger is not in the lineup.
Well, I don't think he should start in the NHL. I just think that's what Pat Verbeek has said.
No, yeah.
And so that's what I'm expecting. How do you see? So this is how I see the pairings. So I think it's going to be Fowler, Zellweger on the first pairing, just because we've seen that, and they can switch off one on the left, one on the right.
Mm-hmm.
Gudas with Minchikov. That's the most natural pairing, and I think it's probably the best pairing. And then on the third pairing, I mean, now this is where it gets interesting, because you could do Lacombe, Dumoulin, but then you have Vakanainen and Luneau waiting in the wings. But I think that Dumoulin's going to be in the lineup, and then they're probably just going to rotate the young guys. And I think Lacombe should have the pole position there, but it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with that.
I mean, do you want to know what I think they should do?
What?
So I think they should do Fowler, Minchikov.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something else.
No. They should do Fowler, Minchikov. Small numbers, but they were good together when they played together last year.
I don't buy that pairing personally.
And then you have Lacombe, Gudas, who did play together and were good together over a decent sample size.
Then again, everyone that plays with Gudis seems to do pretty well. So.
Sure, but I think Jackson Lacombe could probably use that the most out of Lacombe, Zellweger, Minchikov. And then you have Olin Zellweger playing with Brian Dumoulin.
I wouldn't hate that. That would be a good. And the other thing too that we need to keep in mind is that like I don't think Cam Fowler should be a top pairing defenseman, but that's just what he's going to be. Well, so it's not really worth like projecting him as a third pairing because they're going to play him 30 minutes a night still.
I also don't know. I actually don't, because I think that with this group now, I think you're going to see more of an even split through the pairings. I don't think there's going to be a first, second, third pairing. I think that they're going to split things up a bit more evenly. I think that you're going to see one pairing play a bit more, but I don't think we're going to be seeing Cam Fowler playing 25, 26 minutes.
I am willing to bet that he will still play a lot of minutes.
Okay, we'll see.
Like him and Gudis are the guys that Cronin trusts. And until that changes, I don't see that going away.
If Dumoulin can get there, then that breaks it up, because now you have three old. I think that's why they brought him in, was to have three older veterans playing with each younger guy. I think that was the thought process. And so you can split the minutes more. You don't overwork Fowler in that moment. You don't overwork Gudis. You kind of have it more split up evenly with the guys in their 30s not playing over 23, 24 minutes in a game.
Well, what I think happens is that you mentioned each younger guy. There's 4 younger guys, so they can't all play in this.
Are we counting Luneau also?
Well, that's the thing. I am assuming Luneau starts the season because that's what Pat Verbeek has said. We'll see. I mean, that could change, but for the purposes of this conversation, I'm assuming it. Minchikov, Zellweger, Lacombe, Luneau, somebody's got to sit out, and you still have Urho Vakanainen, who's in the fold. I mean, the part of this we haven't talked about is the trade possibility.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me, maybe it's just us, not having a lot to go off of and wanting to see some action, but knowing that the Ducks still have needs up front, knowing that they have a ton of defensemen, like that's not changing. It feels like this opens the door for a trade.
Yeah. And I think that's the elephant in the closet, in the room.
I've never heard elephant in the closet.
Yeah. But I don't know where I got elephant in the room.
That'd be a big closet.
Maybe. But a trade potentially incoming. And is this a sign for that? I'm 50-50. I don't know where you're at on it. I mean, it's possible that you see one of the younger guys. I'm just a little bit in the YouTube chat, and rightfully so. We could see one of the younger guys, whether it's a Jackson Lacombe, whether it's maybe it's Olin Zellweger, maybe it's going for McGroarty, maybe it's a Martin Necas, maybe there's a Mitch Marner trade.
Oh God!
But this opens the door to being able to do that.
Yeah.
And so I think that is kind of the question here: is there a trade that's going to be coming, or is this going to be the group that isn't? Nick Robertson requested a trade out of Toronto. That's an interesting piece.
I'm kind of 50-50 like you, where I could just see this being the group, because I think there's a plausible explanation, which is they're just kind of hedging their bets with some of these younger guys, bring in other veterans, stabilize the group a bit. And I mean, the piece of this that we haven't talked about, which I don't really want to talk about because I'm kind of tired of it, and I think I don't really want it to happen, but it's that the Ducks can just flip him at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
And I mean, you mentioned it, but like that is part of this too, is that he could have a really good half of the season and the Ducks could just sell him at the trade deadline, hopefully for more than a 4th round pick. But I feel like if you're the Ducks, like unless you're well out of it, I feel like you just got to keep him and try to push for the playoffs. Like,
yeah,
I don't know where they're going to be, and this conversation is going to evolve, but like, man, I just feel like if you're still doing those kind of deals in, this would be what, year 3 of Verbeek, year 2.5?
Third deadline. Wait, no.
Third deadline, yeah.
Fourth?
Third deadline. 22, 23. The 22 deadline. Yeah, fourth deadline.
Yeah.
That just feels a little not the best taste in the mouth. But, I mean, if that's the move to be made, that's the move to be made. I don't want to think about that too much yet, but that they do maintain flexibility in that respect. I would just be really shocked if Dumoulin was back beyond next season, just with the amount of defensemen that
agreed. Unless there's a trade that happens that opens up a spot where it makes sense to bring him back.
Maybe. I mean, he's 32, so it's not like, there's much runway left there.
For sure.
But I think he does make the team better. They basically didn't give up anything of note to get him. Mm-hmm. And now it either opens the door for another trade or it just like I said, makes them a better team for the season. So it's a
I
good
mean,
move. It's a good move by Verbeek.
This whole conversation, though, is why the overreaction on day one of the Ducks being doomed, the Ducks are going to be basement dwellers, was overreaction theater.
Well, none of us had this trade on our bingo cards.
No, but the point is that there are trades out there, there are moves out there, and this is just kind of indicative of that. And
that's what I'm saying. None of us saw this coming.
Oh, yeah.
And it happened, and so it's like there could be other deals out there. So interesting that this is kind of the way it's shaken out, though.
And on that point, with deals being out there, the Ducks are underneath the cap floor by what, $4 million? So they have a bunch of space, and there are teams up tight to the cap already.
Mm-hmm. The Capitals.
So the Capitals might actually end up being okay if Oshie goes on LTIR, though.
That's true. Yeah, the Ducks are under $3 million.
Which there's also people wondering about how are the Ducks going to get under that over that. I'm not concerned. Like what? Yeah. They're $3 million away, right?
Yeah, they're $2.8 million away, something like that.
Signing Jackson Lacombe and Regenda and like
that
might get you there.
They have yet to sign the guys that they qualified. So
like this is with a 21 of 23 man roster. So there are 2 more guys that could be coming in that will be added to this roster.
Let me ask you this though.
Yeah.
How much different do you think the roster will look come opening night than it is right now?
Oh, I think there's another trade Do you think the Dumoulin trade is significant?
Did you just flip it on? I asked you the question. Now you're asking me a question back?
Yeah, exactly.
That's not how this works.
Is the Dumoulin trade a significant trade?
No, it's not. I mean, it's significant in the way it kind of disrupts the ecosystem on the blue line, but what do you mean by significant? Like, what does significant mean?
Impacting the team.
I think it's close to significant, but significant to me is like top 4D, top 6.
I think we're gonna see another signing and another trade, at least of the similar significance of the Dumoulin trade.
Well, if you've got a couple of those or 3 of those, then I think you're reaching significance. But
so I think there will be another one of those to make it 2 total. Plus, I really do think they signed Roslovic. No,
I hope it happens just for your sake.
I do too. But as time goes on, I think that's going to be a player Verbeek kind of circles back on. And I just think that there's a fit there.
There is. I agree.
So
I'm not pushing back.
Yeah. So why would he sign for the Ducks? Because the Ducks are able to offer him money, and a lot of teams don't have that money anymore.
The game of musical chairs is not favoring him right now. It's something that we've talked about, or that gets talked about, is that in the first day of free agency, the early stages, I think that the players have a lot more leverage, and as the days progress, the leverage switches back to the teams. And so now the Ducks, with what's left, which again, acknowledging that it's not as good as it was, but they have more leverage than they did on day one, because now there's just less people with money who are willing to sign, and there's still a lot of players standing around. So, we shall see.
Yep. Anything else of significance? You want to briefly touch on day 2 of the draft?
I don't think we have time.
I guess, let me just ask you this. A question for me. Favorite pick of day 2?
Well, I really like the Massé pick, Maxime Massé. I think he's a guy who was talked about a lot in the first 2 rounds. I think they got him, the 3rd round, 4th round?
3rd round, I believe.
Yeah, I like him as a player. I'm partial to the Q kids, of course, but everyone likes the Terrence Smith pick as well.
That is where I'm at.
Just the brief clips I've watched of him, he seems exciting. But yeah, I think that they got some good value on day 2. So we'll see where that goes. Yep. Oh, and then the Lucas Pettersson pick, which I feel like no one's really talking about, but he's an interesting player as well. They got in the 2nd round. So.
Yep. Yeah, the Terrence Smith pick is the one I'm the highest on. I think you look at elite prospects who we trust. The way they talk about the guy is absolutely glowingly.
He's the classic elite prospects player.
100%.
There's a lot of Zellweger to his game, and they love those kind of guys.
Which the story behind drafting him is actually also really cool. That Glenn Cochran, who I think everyone listening to this has heard the story about him, tragically passing away from cancer, but was in their midseason scouting meetings and was really high on Terrence Smith, really went to bat for him. And so Martin Madden kind of came out and said that drafting him in the third round was a way to honor Glenn Cochran, because this was the spot that they had him on their list. So it all kind of worked out. And so they wanted to take him to honor him because of how high he was. And it would make sense with that. He was the person that probably would have been really high on Olin Zellweger, also being the WHL scout. And so
it's a great story.
It's a really, really cool story. And I really hope that Terrence Smith is able to kind of make his way through because of all of that.
Yeah. And I mean, also like the fact that they got Stian Stolberg at 23, it's almost like they got an additional, he's almost like another second rounder, even though he was drafted in the first round, but it's like they really got a lot of value near the top of the draft with Seneca, Stolberg, and Pedersen. And then getting Masse at 66 to me is like, maybe I'm just higher on him than I should be, but I really liked him. Like he was one of the few guys that I sort of looked into for the later rounds, and like, so getting him at 66 seems pretty good. So
yeah, but we'll have a podcast in the future where we'll do more of a deep dive on all of this.
Yeah,
people saying if we've gone over all the picks, and so no, this episode was more so going to be focused on free agency.
I don't have Daryl's Ulyanskis takes at the moment. So
so we'll try to get someone on that is more in the know on all these people to be able to jump in and chime in on all of it. So let's get to questions. We'll start with Discord, and then I think I'm going to skip Twitter today. Sorry, people, but we're running late, so we'll get to a couple from Twitch and YouTube after that. So Brad said, 2-part question. He said, Monday shutout is extremely disappointing. What's the takeaway? A, Verbeek is a tough negotiator who didn't want to take on a bad contract. B, players don't want to play for the Ducks because of SoCal's tax situation or the team struggle.
Wait, hold on. Are those the only options?
Those are his options.
Okay, well, it's none of the above.
Okay.
Because we know that he would have signed a bad contract. At least that's the intel that's out there. Maybe it's not true. And then, okay, looking at option B, I think that the team struggles. You know, he layered that in there. Players don't want to play for the Ducks because of the team struggles. I think that I do buy that. I think that that's part of it, because I think for players, it's like when all things are equal, right? So you've got the same offers, one from a bad team, one from a good team. I think most players are going to take it from the good team. They don't want, especially an older player that is, you know, every year counts. So, yeah. And then how much does this lack of activity hurt the team's immediate and long term?
That question now. Got it.
I think it does hurt a little bit this season, because obviously if you add a Stamkos or a Marchessault, or you're going to be better. By how much we can debate, we have debated. But as far as long-term, I think I would argue it helps them long-term. Like, not signing any of these contracts is a good thing.
Yep. Helps them long-term. And I mean, potentially in the short term, if like these guys are taking up roster spots that should be going to other guys and they're not playing up to their contracts, things like that. But most likely that's not going to be the case. So D Frenzy said, I know a lot of people are mad about the lack of activity on Pat Verbeek's end. This is a question for each of you. If you two were GM of the Ducks separately, what would you have done today? This was written out yesterday. And he's like, do any of the players that were available make sense for the Ducks?
I think we've kind of touched on this by now. But like Toffoli, you know, would have made sense. Victor Arvidsson, Duclair. I really like Sean Monahan. And so that's the kind of tier of players I would have looked at. I would not have really cared about Marchessault or Stamkos personally.
Yeah, I would have probably really focused on Sean Walker. I would have focused on probably Matt Roy. I would have focused on Tyler Toffoli, Victor Arvidsson, that second wave that you kind of really talked about right there.
Yeah.
Drake Duquesne said, do the Ducks start dealing their 2025 picks for current NHL talent?
I don't think so. Like, I don't think they're dealing their first round pick for 2025. I don't see that happening.
Yeah. Isaac said, do you see Verbeek trading for Rutger McGroarty?
I see it. Will he actually
traded for Cutter Gauthier?
Yeah, I mean he's made of almost the exact same type of deal in the last few months. So yes, I do see it.
Yep. Sad Genius said, with Vakanainen back in the Dumoulin trade, when does Jackson Lacombe get traded?
I mean, I think he would be a really logical piece to include in a McGroarty trade because you're giving the Winnipeg another young D, and they probably given where they're at as a franchise, they probably don't want to just get draft picks back. They want someone who can help them now. So I could see it being Lacombe. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. Heyo Deflo said, is the Dumoulin acquisition the highest value transaction of the last 48 hours?
No. I mean, I know that the acquisition cost was really low, but like Dumoulin's an expiring contract. It's kind of a defensive specialist.
I'd agree.
I mean, it's good value, but there's a lot more picks.
I think the Gensel trade, getting Gensel is a really good trade for Tampa. Well, getting his rights and then that contract.
I just love, I mean, this is not going to be a popular take, but I love Tampa just being completely heartless.
Same.
I mean, I'm sure that it's not that simple, but like they were just like,
they upgraded.
We have Kucherov. Better. We have an MVP caliber player. Gensel is just a better player than Stamkos by a lot right now. So yeah, they did well.
Yeah, they got better. Let's see.
We have a tax debate in our chat right now.
We do.
Can people just stop? Just don't do that. Anyway, continue.
Yep. Free Agency Champions 2024 said, how important do you think the ongoing development camp is in determining who Verbeek sees as a future Duck and who he sees as a trade chip, or do you think that decision has mostly already been made? I mean, I don't think the development camp really plays a part in any of that, and I don't think he's really identified who is a trade chip at all.
Yeah, I don't think development camp is a bellwether for trade pieces.
Yeah. OG Leo Carlson Truther said, craft a trade package for Draisaitl. Try to be totally fair to Edmonton and remove any bias.
I think that assuming an extension is in place, right? Because otherwise you're not making a deal. I feel like Edmonton, do they make this trade without the Ducks 2025 pick coming back?
No.
So it's probably going to take your pick. It's probably going to take... He has 1 year left in his contract, right?
Let's assume there's an extension in place.
I know, but he has 1 year.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. The 25 pick, Trevor Zegras?
Zegras or McTavish.
Zegras or McTavish, and then maybe another pick?
I would say one of Minchikov or Zellweger also.
Really? But like...
Yeah.
I'd be really curious to... I know it's Draisaitl, but he's got a year left on his contract.
Like that's with an extension in place, is what I'm saying.
True. Oh man,
you don't make this trade without an extension in place.
McTavish and Luneau in the first.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would do that.
I mean, I would do that too.
I don't know. It might take more.
It probably does take a lot more. I don't really have a read on superstar forward getting traded with a year left on his
I think
contract.
it's Minchikov, McTavish, and a first.
Would you do that?
Not with Minchikov.
I really like Minchikov, so I'd probably say no. But if it's Luneau, then
maybe
yes.
I'm overrating Minchikov though.
Well, the thing with Draisaitl is, how old is he? Is he 27, 28?
Yeah.
Like, you're really betting big on his prime, basically. So I don't know. It's an interesting conversation.
Yeah. And then Connor also said, second question, honest reaction to the following image, which is totally real. It's not. But it is the orange third jersey with Jacob Trouba's number 8 on it.
Well, it doesn't sound like he's leaving the Rangers now.
No, it really doesn't.
I think that
all the stories coming out about his wife.
He played a very smart PR card.
Yeah. By the way, Kapil Agarwal said Draisaitl is 28. He just double checked that for us.
Yeah.
So SP84 said, hey guys, with the draft and one free agency move made, how do you guys feel about the totality of the last 7 days of Ducks moves?
I mean, I think it's positive. I think you can debate how positive it is, but they made good picks in the draft. They avoided some bad contracts in free agency, got a little better on the fringes. I think the draft is doing the heavy lifting, but it's still overall positive.
Yeah, and really quickly, there's people saying with Draisaitl, they wouldn't do that because you hope that the picks and these players become that. The only player in the Duck system that can potentially become Leon Draisaitl is Leo Carlson. Like that is just how good Leon Draisaitl is,
Yeah.
and that's just something to keep in mind there.
Yeah.
And so let's see. Mitch Brown's beloved said, with all the big names that the Ducks couldn't get in the first couple days of free agency, do you give us the fans the permission to be mad?
Yeah, there is a content creator out there that gave fans permission to be mad, and they owe him a debt of gratitude for that.
Yep. D-Rock said, who will appear in the most games for the Ducks among this group? Thanks, Derek. Ross Johnston, Nikita Nesterenko, Pavel Regenda, Jansen Harkins.
Wow, that is a deep cut.
Can I admit something?
What?
Today, I forgot his name was Jansen after we signed and kept searching for Jesper Harkins on various things.
Okay.
Yeah, just completely butchering his first name.
I'll say Harkins, just because they signed him, but I don't feel strongly about it.
I'll go Regenda.
I find it fascinating that they are bringing Regenda back.
With arbitration rights.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how compelling his argument in arbitration would be, but
who knows if he even files for it.
Yeah, I don't know how well that would work out for him.
And then Derek also said, alternatively, which one will spend the most time in the press box? I'm going to go for my own sake, Ross.
I mean, that should be the answer. Will it be the answer?
For my sanity, Ross?
Yeah. But probably Nesterenko.
I think Nesterenko will be I guess the question will be, are we counting San Diego as the press box here?
I mean, that's the thing. Is Nesterenko going to be on this team? I have no feel for that.
Yeah.
I just don't know what to make of that player. He is a mystery box.
Yeah. Yeah. Our good friend BPH said, can we trade Heavy Hockey FS15 so he can be taken off the board for the Ducks?
I love the interweaving of bits from the Discord there. And I will just say, well done. And if you know, you know.
SCS Per said, should Berhalter be fired? Yes, obviously.
Is USA Soccer not doing so hot?
No, Canada is the only team to make it out because they actually have a good manager in Jesse Marsh.
Alfonso
USA
Davies?
and Mexico did not make it out of the group. Canada did because Jesse Marsh should be the U.S. manager.
Isn't Mexico like perennial failures in the international play?
Depends on the year.
Okay.
OG's Stian's, is it Stian or did he say to go Stan?
It's definitely not Stan.
But I think he said to call him Stan.
Okay, but I was watching a game of his from Norway yesterday, and that's not how they were pronouncing it. But
okay. Well, I'm just gonna go with
if he's okay with Stan, then that's fine.
Okay. Rooch asks us, is Pat Verbeek playing 4D chess? No, he tried to get these guys and didn't get it. This was not a 4D chess game.
Yeah, I mean, we have intel. I think it's interesting that came out for some reason. Is that the Ducks doing damage control? Or is that like the agent of these guys spilling that?
I think it's damage control.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm assuming it's true. We'll go with that.
Yeah. All right. So we are now sorry, folks on Twitter. We're gonna skip Twitter and just go straight to Twitch and YouTube. For those of you listening to this on your favorite podcast services, you can find us at twitch.tv/crashpond, where you can subscribe to us over there, like the channel. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch Prime gaming sub each and every month, and it does help out more than you can imagine. You get special emotes in the chat, special badges next to your name, and it significantly helps. Or you can just follow us and you get notified whenever we go live. Or if you have a YouTube account, and yes, I know everyone listening to this has a YouTube account, go to youtube.com/crashpond, where you can subscribe to the channel. You can give us a super chat. If you just want to give us a little bit of a tip and get your question right there, we'll read it right away, no matter what, whenever it comes through. Or you can subscribe to us and get notified when we go live. And let's get some likes here. It helps out more than you can imagine.
Like spike.
A little bit of a like spike. But so we're going to hit some questions first. Gabriel V said, do you think Solberg has a guaranteed spot in our decor, especially with how Madden talked about him?
I think he's going to get every opportunity. I don't know what his ceiling will be. He's a very interesting... I've actually gotten a chance to watch his games. Or some of his games. And I like what I see, but also I think he's like a second pairing guy, maybe a third pairing. But yeah, I think they're going to give him a chance. They clearly like him quite a bit.
Yeah, and then last one left side. Can we trade for Nature so we can be Checkheim? Sure. I mean,
Wait,
like Checkheim.
who are? Oh, so Gudis and Dostal. Those are the
Gudis and
other two.
Dostal.
Okay.
Like that would be the because actually that's something that came out is that there was potentially a trade between Columbus and Carolina, but Nate just wouldn't agree to an extension in Columbus.
Shocker.
And so I think Anaheim has a much better option or much better case because of those guys.
I think Czechia-Heim works a little better.
Yeah, it does. Connor said, "Is Danny Evans a credible Ducks beat reporter? He's been on my timeline recently, but has seemed very biased / opinionated."
Well, I don't know Danny Evans personally, but Jake and I have both worked. We both have posted articles at the Sporting Tribune, and Derek Lee was writing there, and we know Arash who runs it. We know that he vets people, so he's not bringing people on willy-nilly. So I think that there's definitely some credibility there, and also like everyone has a different style. It's okay for a beat writer to flash some opinion and show a little bias. Like I think as long as in your work and your overall body of work you're being balanced, then showing opinion is fine. I mean, Jake and I don't pretend to be beat writers, but we have our biases and we have the things that we prefer to see happen, but we also try to paint the most complete picture possible for everybody so that way you can then conclude for yourself what you think of the situation. So, Danny's new to it. We'll see how he develops, but give him a chance.
Yep.
Everybody deserves a chance.
Agreed with that. DeGoofy Goober on Twitch said, realistically, when are the Ducks contenders?
Oh, playoff contenders or Stanley Cup contenders? I'm
Both.
assuming he means cup contenders.
Yeah.
Cup contenders like 4 years.
Let's go 3 years.
Okay. Fine.
Yeah. Daniel Lowry said, question, what do you make of some suggestions that a lot of guys are adding Anaheim to their NMCs? Is this blown out of proportion? I mean,
who's suggesting that?
Yeah, I haven't seen suggestions on that, but I mean, it's possible. The Ducks aren't good. Like the Ducks have not been good and made the playoffs since 2018. Like that's not shocking.
I think it's interesting that the Sharks though were able to land Toffoli, who are definitely not a good team.
Well, but that's not to do about the NMCs, but they also may have given him a 4th year. And other teams weren't willing to.
That's true, but I'm just saying, like,
Ducks got Killorn.
The bad team thing is interesting because I do think it plays a huge part, but I'm a little confused. The Toffoli thing makes it slightly confusing, but yeah, I don't buy into it. I mean, if they are putting the team on the NMC, then fine. Like at some point that will change. Like these things are cyclical. Players don't want to go to bad teams, and then when the team is bad, they will then layer on other reasons not to go. So like people love to talk about taxes. People love to talk about, and taxes is probably the biggest one, but like, people go to the Rangers all the time, and like New York has one of the highest tax burdens. So it really is just like, depending on how good the team is.
Every team has different reasons to play for them and different reasons to not want to play for them.
Yep. But I think competitiveness is like these guys want to win. Like, that's what they want.
And where you're competitive and contending, players take less money to sign for you. Like that's the flip side of it. Is it's harder to get players right now, but when you're a good team, it becomes easier to get players as a result of that. Yep. Ancient Mariner 84 said, "Why is Stan Solberg the best story in hockey right now?"
I don't think he's the best story in hockey, but
I don't think he's the best story in hockey. He's a good story.
He's a good story. Yeah.
Yeah. Logan said, "Percentage chance Lacombe lasts the season in Anaheim." If he makes it to the start of the season, I'd say 95%.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. Nasrina Prihati said, "I don't think the Ducks will sign Tarasenko or Sprong, but how is the probability of us signing them?"
Tarasenko, I don't think that they would see him as a fit. Like, but he did just play in the Cup final. I mean, he just won a second Stanley Cup. He brings that winning pedigree, which they covet. He does bring that kind of right shot dimension. And honestly, watching the Panthers in the Cup final, like his line, the third line, they were really good. Yeah. And so I could see them maybe being interested in him, but I don't know.
50-50.
Is he
I
interested
think
in them? Is the question.
I think you could give him a 1-year deal with a high cap hit, and like that's a good way around it where you can give him essentially the Klingberg deal of saying, okay, if we end up being bad, we'll trade you to a contender.
Yeah.
Like he may want term because that's what I think he did last year with Ottawa was a 1-year deal, but I mean, we'll see.
Who went to Ottawa? There was a noteworthy trade or noteworthy signing for Ottawa. Oh, Perron. That's what I was thinking of.
Oh, I missed that completely. David Perron signed in Ottawa?
Yeah, he did. I don't have the term in front of me, and I'm just too lazy to pull it up.
Missed that one completely.
Someone can pop it up and then the chat. But yeah.
LOL Good One said, and the Ducks, if the Ducks are basement dwellers this season, is Verbeek on the hot seat?
Yes.
He should be.
I don't think that they can be you can't have another season like they just had. Something has gone wrong at that point. And so yes, I think he has to be.
2 times 4 is what Logan's saying he thinks for Perron.
I like that.
Kapil Agarwal said Chance Zegras stays with the team through the end of the season.
Well, if he makes it to the season, which I think he will, it's like 100%.
Yeah.
I don't think that kind of trade happens in season.
No. I think it's 100% he's going to be on the team by the end of next season.
I hope so. What
happens after that, we'll see.
I hope you're right.
I mean, I think hopefully Trevor Zegras is going to make the Ducks regret ever thinking about trading him with how he plays this season.
Or signing him to a bridge deal.
That too. Nasrina Prihati said, question, who made the biggest overpay signing in the free agent market so far? Seattle. Chandler Stevenson.
I pulled up a list. I just pulled up an Athletic article of the best and worst contracts. Do you want me to read you some contracts?
So is it Stevenson?
Let me just go through the contracts. Okay. I'll just read you them and you react to them.
Okay.
I will say, though, as a spoiler, that these were in the worst category. Elias Lindholm, 7.75 mil, 7 years. That feels like a lot to me for Lindholm.
It feels like a lot, but that's what he was like. I guess his stock went down this year, but that's what everyone like projected him at like last summer.
That's a boring answer. He doesn't move me. I don't know what it is.
I agree, but I like that one doesn't feel that bad for me because that feels like where he should be at.
Let's do this one. You'll 5 mil by 6 years for Nikita Zadorov.
Yeah, that's awful. Nikita's this
When did this happen? When did this happen?
When did Nikita Zadorov become like a like good like someone that people thought like wasn't Zadorov like a laughing stock for a while? Or am I getting him and Zaitsev confused in my head?
Zaitsev is definitely a laughing stock. I mean, Zadorov's numbers were worse than Brian Dumoulin's this season. Same kind of profile of player. He was really good for Calgary the year before. He had really good numbers for Calgary the year before.
I'm definitely thinking Zaitsev then. Yeah, was who I was thinking of. But Zadorov.
This season he was not that good, but in the years prior he was a very solid like two-way defenseman. So I don't know. It still feels rich to me.
I mean, him getting that much term is wild behavior.
There were so many teams where I'm like, what are they cooking? And Boston is one of them where I'm like, damn, I guess they're just never gonna try to like rebuild or anything. Like, they're committed.
Yeah, it looks like he was okay, I guess, in Colorado, but never like that great.
Wait, who?
Zadorov.
Oh, you're going way back.
Yeah. I'm like looking at his numbers right now.
Okay, let's just keep going through these contracts.
Yeah,
though.
Sorry.
Chandler Stevenson, 7 years, 6.25 mil to the Kraken.
That one is the one where I'm just like,
he's 30.
What the hell? Why is Chandler Stevenson getting a 7-year deal at 30 years old?
I honestly like, it's kind of hilarious though, because the Kraken were hailed as this like forward thinking front office. And this is like old school bad NHL GM contract. This is as bad as it gets. So
yeah, that is the worst contract, by the way.
Joel Edmondson, 3.8 times 4 to the Kings. That is
I'll let you talk on that one because Edmondson was a Canadian at least.
Joel Edmondson, first off, questionable that he can stay healthy at all, but like just brings some defensive play, but it's just not a needle mover at all. And to give him 4 years, the 3.8 is fine, I guess, but he's 31. Like 4 years for a guy who can't stay healthy at 31, just no. Nah.
To go from Matt Roy to Joel Edmondson,
Yeah, downgrade button.
like massive downgrade button.
Matt Dumba, 3.75 times 2
That one's not
to
bad.
Dallas. I mean, I think it's just that he hasn't been good, but the contract itself is
That's
whatever.
not a bad contract.
Yakov Trenin got 3.5 times 4 to Minnesota. It's on the worst list, but I don't know.
I don't have an opinion on Yakov Trenin.
I don't either. Okay, that was fun.
Yeah, the Chandler Stevenson is probably the worst, but Joel Edmondson's up there. Nikita Zadorov. Those are probably the three.
I'm saying Edmondson is the worst one because I just don't know what he's actually going to bring to the Kings. Like, at least Stevenson, you know he can bring something.
Sure, fair.
Yeah.
Edmondson, Zadorov also. I think Zadorov is going to be. I think he's going to be hated. I think there's going to be.
He's going to be loved by the Bruin fans.
There's going to be a sect of fans that are like in love with him, and there's also going to be a group that absolutely hate them.
What did you think about Brady Shea 7x7?
Where I missed that. Where did he sign again?
Nashville.
I mean, Nashville just went out and spent money.
They just
like
I
it's
love
funny
it.
because they were just like, we're rebuilding, and then last year they had Saros go off. They had like resurgent seasons from all these guys, and like,
they
all right,
played
we're just
well.
gonna.
They were a good team.
We're just gonna spend all this money on these guys that are 30 or about to be or over 30 or about to be 30. So it's like,
yeah,
I think they're gonna be a good team this year. Who knows where they'll be 2 years from now?
Brady Shea is 30.
Yeah,
like, I know he's been seen as this underrated defenseman for a long time, but man, ooh, just hurts. That hurts to look at.
I feel like Nashville has to be like the oldest team in the NHL.
God, just look at their roster: Forsberg, Stamkos, Marchessault, O'Reilly, Nyquist, Yossi.
They have to have the oldest
Luke
roster
Shen.
in the NHL.
This is gonna be This they're just they
added
team.
Scott Wedgwood.
They did, yeah.
31. Like this is for sure the oldest team in the NHL.
Oh, what team I wanted to talk to you about? We are running late, but
yeah, that's fine.
it's just so much fun. Is the Capitals? Like, holy crap! Crap! The Capitals. They just did a bunch of shit, and I am just fascinated to see what they got Andrew Mangiapane. Of course, the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, the Matt Roy signing, the Jacob Chychrun trade,
which felt like it came out of nowhere.
Like they might be decent. They might be decent next season.
I mean, Jacob Chychrun helps them. Matt Roy helps them. I think Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to have a resurgent season.
Yeah, he's only 26. Like
he's gonna have a good season next year, and it's gonna make all the people saying Rob Blake did the right thing by just dumping a salary look bad.
They also got Logan Thompson, so nice goalie piece.
Yeah, that's right. And then this is
that is a
wild.
Team. That is a team.
Yeah, certainly is a team.
Yeah, there's a video going around a picture of Ovechkin playing like pickleball in Russia or something. And Daniel Lowry in our chat saying, well, Ovi has 50 pounds to lose. He looks a little hefty. But he's had that before, though. There have been off-season
I feel like
Ovi pictures.
He probably knows how to drop weight.
He looks chonky in that picture. So, hey, live your best life. Have you heard of his his pregame meal?
No.
It's basically like a tub of pasta. The man probably ingests like 200 grams of carbs before playing.
That's amazing. I wish I could do that.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what he looks like. He might be in his Keith Tkachuk era post playing career.
He for sure is going to be in his Keith Tkachuk era.
Yeah.
He's definitely not going to be in a Paul Kariya era.
No.
So,
okay.
I think that's going to do it for tonight, though. I don't think shit show. We're already an hour 30.
Yeah. I really want to find Ovechkin's full meal, but I'm not going to be able to find it. Okay. Thank you for listening, everyone. This was fun. We had a good time.
We did.
The vibes
I had a great time. Vibes were high.
The vibes were strangely great, even in the chat. You know, I was expecting some vitriol. Didn't happen.
No one was running around with their head cut off, saying Verbeek should be fired. That Verbeek needs to go out and do something and overpay for Tarasenko right now because of it.
I really think that it's put up or shut up time with this team next season. Like, The team is fundamentally almost the same. There's going to be some tweaks around the margins, but like we're going to see a lot of young players, a lot of opportunity. Greg Cronin, like I'm not happy that it happened this way, but I'm very the curiosity now is higher than it actually was before because now it's like these guys, the guys in that locker room are the ones who have to turn it around. So let's see what they do.
Yep.
Okay. If you want to support the podcast, very easy ways to do that. Number one way is our Patreon page, patreon.com/crashthepond. For $2 a month, you get access to our patrons only Discord server. Great place to keep up on all Ducks news. It was literally just like you couldn't scroll up yesterday in when free agency was gone because there was just new messages coming in like every second.
I had a meeting at 9, and so I tried scrolling back up to like get to 9 a.m. and I could not because every time I stopped, it like jumped me down. So yes, it was constantly going.
And then you can upgrade that to $7.50 a month. You get access to 2 bonus Patreon podcast episodes. So we're probably going to do one where we just talk about every signing. We do that every year, and I feel like this year it's actually going to be really fun.
Yeah.
Because of like $1 billion were spent on July 1st. And then you also get access to player breakdown videos. So in the lead up to the draft, I did watch along videos of each prospect. And now I'm doing them for each guy that they drafted. So right now there's 3 videos up on Stian Solberg. So go check that out. That's at patreon.com/crashthepond. You can also leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate that. Those go a long way. So if you've been listening to the show and you haven't left one yet, do it. Just takes a couple minutes. You can also subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, find us on X/Twitter. I think calling it Twitter now is starting to get a little weird.
No, it's Twitter. I still call it Twitter.
And check out our website, crashthepond.com. And with all that being said, thanks for listening, everyone. And we'll talk to you next week. Enjoy your 4th of July.
Bye.